My name is Alex, and I'm 28 years old. If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have said my family was your standard, mildly dysfunctional unit. Sure, there were the usual passive-aggressive comments at Thanksgiving. My mom clearly favoring my younger sister Emma and my dad being blissfully clueless about most family dynamics. Annoying, yes, unbearable, not really. But then Emma's wedding happened and I realized something: my family doesn't just have a favorite, they have a main character. And spoiler alert, it's not me. To set the scene, Emma is 25. She's always been the golden child, the one my parents doted on, the one who got the best of everything. While I was expected to quietly excel in the background, I was the one who had to set a good example, the one reminded to act my age and be responsible, while Emma threw tantrums over not getting a brand new car on her 16th birthday. Guess who ended up with that shiny new car after throwing a fit? Not me. Despite knowing this, I still thought I'd at least be a part of her big day. I didn't expect to be the star. It was her wedding after all. But I figured I'd at least have a decent seat at the reception. Maybe share a table with our parents or a few close relatives, but what I got was something else entirely. When I arrived at the venue, I went to pick up my place card, fully expecting it to be somewhere near family, maybe even close to the head table. But my name wasn't on the main seating chart. I asked the event planner, who glanced at her list before offering me a tight, uncomfortable smile. "Oh, you're just over here," she said, pointing to a small, lonely table outside the main ballroom, tucked between the coat rack and the restroom hallway. I actually laughed, thinking it had to be a mistake. Maybe they ran out of space and had to shuffle things around at the last minute. But no, that was my assigned seat. Not even in the reception hall. Just out in the hallway, near the faint smell of mothballs and the clatter of servers rushing back and forth. Still trying to convince myself this was just some bizarre oversight. I went looking for Emma. I found her near the bridal suite, surrounded by her friends and our mom, who was busy fussing over her veil like it was the crown jewels. Emma saw me coming and flashed a tight, almost pained smile. "Oh, hey, you made it," she said. Her voice high and forced, like she was trying to be cheerful but really just annoyed that I was there at all. I held up my place card. "Quick question. Why is my seat literally outside the reception?" Emma blinked, then gave a little giggle, adjusting her veil like she had all the time in the world. "Oh, that. Yeah, we had to make some last-minute changes." "You know how it is." I frowned, refusing to let this slide. "Right, and I'm the one who got bumped to the hallway." She shrugged, flicking a glance at our mom, who was pretending to be deeply fascinated by the texture of Emma's dress. "Well, we had to prioritize close family for the main tables." I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "I am close family." Emma's eyes flicked away, her lips tightening. "Look, Alex, you moved out years ago. You're always so busy and you're not like married or anything. It's just different now." It hit me then. The unspoken rule of our family, the invisible line I'd apparently crossed by daring to live my own life. I wasn't immediate family anymore because I had grown up and dared to become my own person, because I hadn't stuck around to play the supportive, ever-available older sibling role. Before I could say anything, our mom chimed in, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Now, Alex, don't make a scene. It's Emma's special day." That was the moment I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just anger, it was a deep, bone-chilling realization. They had drawn a line and I was on the outside of it. Fine. If that's how they wanted to play it, I could be the outsider. I could embrace that role. But they had clearly forgotten one thing. I grew up with Emma. I knew her secrets. I knew all the little things she said behind people's backs. The whisper she thought would never come back to haunt her. And suddenly I realized I had no reason to keep those secrets anymore. I plastered on a smile, my mind already spinning with possibilities. "You know what, you're right. I wouldn't want to ruin your big day." I turned on my heel and started to walk away, already planning my next move. They wanted to make me feel small, to push me to the margins of this family. Fine. But they'd regret it, that I would make sure of. The reception was in full swing when I walked back toward the main hall, my mind buzzing with a mix of anger and determination. I glanced at my sad little hallway table one more time, my place card sitting there like a slap in the face, and made a decision. If they wanted me to play the background character, I'd give them a performance they'd never forget. I ducked into the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and took a few deep breaths. I needed a plan, something that would cut deep but keep me just on the right side of plausible deniability. I wasn't about to explode in the middle of the dance floor or flip over the cake. No, I wanted something smarter, quieter. The kind of move that would echo through the family for years. When I finally emerged, I caught sight of Emma's maid of honor, Sarah, leaning against the vanity fixing her lipstick. Perfect. Sarah and I had never been particularly close, but I knew she loved a bit of drama. I stepped up to the sink beside her, catching her eye in the mirror. "Hey, Sarah," I said casually, washing my hands. "I just had the weirdest conversation with Emma." Sarah paused, her eyes flicking toward me with the sharpness of a cat catching sight of a mouse. "Oh, what happened?" I forced a little laugh, drying my hands slowly. "She basically told me I'm not real family anymore because I'm single and moved out. Said that's why my seat is practically in the parking lot." Sarah's perfectly drawn eyebrows shot up. "She said that?" "Yup," I said, folding the paper towel neatly before tossing it into the trash. "But you know I shouldn't be surprised. She's always been like this, always needing to be the center of attention." Sarah's lips twitched. Her curiosity clearly piqued. I leaned in a little, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I mean, remember last summer when she threw that massive fit because she thought you were trying to upstage her at her own engagement party?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "She told you about that?" I gave a little shrug, turning to face her fully. "Oh yeah," she said, "she thought you were being extra with that dress, like you were trying to make it about you." I let the words hang in the air, watching as Sarah's eyes darkened. For a moment, she looked like she was going to brush it off, but then she snapped her lipstick cap shut with a little more force than necessary. "Well, if that's how she feels." I smiled to myself as I walked out, already hearing Sarah's heels clicking aggressively behind me. That was the thing about Emma. She thrived on being the victim, but she had a habit of burning bridges without realizing it. And I had just lit the first match. I made my way back into the hallway, slipping my phone out of my pocket as I leaned against the wall. Time for phase 2? I scrolled through my contacts until I found Jake, Emma's ex-boyfriend. They had dated for almost 4 years before she dumped him for her current husband, Adam. The minute she realized Jake's startup wasn't taking off as quickly as she'd hoped. She had always been about status. And Jake, for all his good qualities, just didn't fit her picture of the perfect power couple. I fired off a quick, carefully worded text. "Hey Jake, random. Question. You still have those photos from Emma's 25th birthday, the ones she swore never to show anyone? Just had a funny thought." I hit send and leaned back, slipping my phone into my pocket. Jake had every reason to still be a little bitter. And if I knew him, he'd be more than happy to stir the pot, especially if it involved getting a little payback. As I leaned against the wall, watching the servers dart back and forth with trays of champagne and tiny hors d'oeuvres, I felt a spark of satisfaction. This wasn't just about a bad seating arrangement anymore. This was about making them all see the cracks in the perfect family picture they loved to pretend we were. I straightened up as my phone buzzed. Jake had replied. "Jake, haha. Oh man, I know exactly which ones you mean. I've still got them." "Why?" I smiled, my fingers moving quickly over the screen. "Me? Let's just say I think it's time a few people remembered the real Emma. Mind if I borrow them?" I could practically feel his smirk through the screen as he typed back, "Jake, go for it. She deserves it after the way she dumped me. Sending them now." A few seconds later, my phone chimed again as the photos came through. I glanced down, a wicked grin spreading across my face. Oh, this was going to be good. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, feeling a strange lightness in my chest. They wanted me on the sidelines, pushed to the margins, forgotten, fine. But I'd make sure they regretted it. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and strolled back into the reception hall, my mind already spinning with the possibilities. The first domino had fallen. Now it was just a matter of watching the whole thing collapse. As I stepped back into the ballroom, the music thumped through my chest, the bass vibrating through the polished floors. Guests swirled around me, laughter and clinking glasses echoing off the crystal chandeliers. Emma's perfect fairy tale was in full swing, but I had just placed the first crack in her carefully constructed kingdom. I found my way to the bar, grabbing a glass of champagne and taking a slow sip as I scanned the room. My parents were seated near the front, my mom's head thrown back in exaggerated laughter as she clung to Emma's every word. Emma, of course, was the radiant center of attention, her white dress glowing under the soft, flattering lights. Jake's photos had just come through, and I couldn't resist taking a quick peek. They were exactly as I remembered, a series of chaotic, unfiltered snapshots from her 25th birthday party. Emma visibly tipsy, leaning into a guy who definitely wasn't Adam. A blurry shot of her whispering into a friend's ear, a mischievous glint in her eyes. And the pièce de résistance, a candid of her wide-eyed and giggling pouring champagne directly from the bottle into someone's mouth while her friends cheered. Not exactly the image of the polished, flawless bride she pretended to be. I stifled a chuckle and slipped my phone back into my pocket. Not yet, I told myself timing was everything I needed, to wait for just the right moment to let these little gems see the light. I felt a presence beside me and turned to find my cousin Mia sidling up to the bar. She was one of the few family members who hadn't fully bought into the cult of Emma, and I had a feeling she'd be more than happy to help fan the flames. "Hey, Mia," I said, clinking my glass against hers. "Enjoying the show?" She snorted, rolling her eyes. "Barely?" Emma's already pulled me aside twice to remind me to keep my speech positive and not mention the time she borrowed my prom dress and ruined it. I smirked, classic Emma. Always managing the narrative. Mia glanced around, leaning in closer. "I saw your seat. That was brutal." I took another sip of my champagne, letting the bubbles tickle my throat. "Yeah, well, I guess I'm not immediate family anymore." Her eyes darkened. "That's messed up." She paused, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You know you should say something. Call her out." I smiled, my mind already spinning. "Oh, don't worry, I plan to." As Mia drifted back into the crowd, I felt the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. It was like watching the first sparks of a fire catch on dry wood. All I had to do now was keep fanning those flames. A few minutes later, the DJ's voice crackled over the speakers. "All right, everyone, if I could have your attention, we're about to kick off the speeches. If our lovely maid of honor, Sarah, could make her way to the mic." I watched as Sarah, the same. Sarah, I had just planted a seed of doubt and strutted up to the stage, her face a mask of polite, practiced confidence. I leaned against the wall, anticipation curling in my chest like smoke. Sarah took the mic, flashing a broad, overly bright smile at the crowd. "Hey everyone, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah, Emma's maid of honor and supposedly one of her closest friends." She shot a pointed look at Emma, whose smile flickered for just a fraction of a second. "I've known Emma since college, and let me tell you, she has always been the life of the party. Always the first to dance, the loudest to cheer, and the one with the craziest stories." She paused, her gaze settling on Emma like a cat watching a trapped mouse. "In fact, I was just reminiscing about her 25th birthday. You guys remember that party, right? I almost choked on my champagne." Oh, this was going to be better than I'd hoped. Emma's face tightened, her knuckles turning white around her champagne flute. "Oh, come on, don't look so nervous," Sarah continued, her grin widening. "I mean, sure, some of those photos might be a little, let's say, unflattering, but that's what makes the best memories, right?" The crowd chuckled, a few people exchanging curious glances. Emma's parents shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing the sudden shift in the room's energy. I watched as Emma's perfect composure started to crack her eyes, darting between Sarah and her new husband Adam, who looked more than a little confused. Sarah's smile sharpened her eyes, glinting with just a hint of the same mischief I had seen in those birthday photos. "Don't worry, Em. Your secrets are safe with me for now." She let the words hang in the air, the mic squealing slightly as she stepped back, letting the sudden awkward silence settle over the room. I bit back a laugh as Emma's face flushed a deep, furious red. Sarah gave a little wave and practically skipped off the stage, clearly pleased with herself. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket and slipped it out to find a new message from Jake. "Jake. Hey, just thought you'd like to know. Adam's a pretty decent guy. I ran into him at a conference last month. Didn't seem like the type to take well to secrets, just saying." I grinned, feeling the fire start to spread. The first spark had landed and the flames were licking at the edges of Emma's perfect little fantasy. I drained the rest of my champagne, set the glass down on the bar, and slipped back into the crowd, my mind already racing ahead to the next move. After Sarah's mic drop moment, the reception felt different. The air had shifted like the sharp, crackling energy before a summer storm. I could see it in the way people whispered behind their champagne glasses. The subtle glances thrown Emma's way as she tried to plaster on her flawless bride smile. I drifted through the crowd, my mind buzzing with ideas. Sarah had just delivered the first real blow, and it had hit its mark perfectly. But I wasn't done. If I was going to truly shatter Emma's perfect image, I needed something bigger, something public. That's when I spotted my dad standing stiffly near the edge of the dance floor, his tie slightly askew and his glass already half empty. He had always been the quiet one, the peacemaker, the type to let my mom handle the emotional minefield of family drama. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted nervously around the room. He knew something was off. I made my way over, weaving through clusters of tipsy aunts and laughing cousins until I was beside him. "Hey, Dad," I said, leaning in so he could hear me over the music. "Enjoying the party." He gave me a distracted nod, his gaze flicking toward Emma, who was now deep in conversation with Adam. Her smile tight, her gestures sharp. Yeah, it's nice," he said, clearly lying. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch between us for a moment. "You know, I noticed my seat was outside." His eyes darted to mine, a flicker of guilt passing over his face. He opened his mouth and closed it, his jaw working like he was struggling to find the right words. "I'm sorry, Alex." He finally managed, his voice low. "Your mother?" "Well, she handled the seating chart." "Of course she had." My mother had always been the one to micromanage every detail, to control the narrative of our lives, even if it meant pushing me to the sidelines. I forced a tight smile. "Figures?" "Well, at least it's a nice hallway." He winced, looking like he wanted to say something more, but before he could, my mom appeared beside us, her smile stretched so tight it looked painful. "Oh, there you are, Alex," she said, her tone a mix of forced cheer and thinly veiled annoyance. "I was just telling your father how lovely everything turned out." Emma really outdid herself, didn't she? I felt a spark of irritation flare in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. "Oh, definitely. She's always been good at making everything about her." My mom's eyes narrowed slightly, her polished smile slipping for just a heartbeat. "Now, let's not start that," she said, her voice dropping to a sharper, more familiar tone. "This is Emma's day. You should be happy for your sister." I met her gaze, letting a slow, knowing smile spread across my face. "Oh, I'm thrilled. In fact, I'm so happy for her that I might just share a few of my favorite memories during my toast." My mother's face paled, her perfectly manicured nails tightening around her champagne glass. "Alex," she hissed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't you dare ruin this for her." I leaned in, my smile never faltering. "Ruin it." "Oh, come on, Mom. You know I'd never do that." I pulled back before she could respond, slipping back into the crowd, my heart pounding with a strange mix of nerves and exhilaration. I knew I was playing with fire, but I didn't care. They had pushed me out, treated me like an outsider, and I was done playing the quiet, forgotten sibling. As I moved through the crowd, I caught sight of Adam's mother, a sharp-eyed, silver-haired woman who had always seemed a bit too cold for the warm, southern hospitality my family tried to project. She was sitting near the edge of the dance floor, her gaze fixed on Emma with an intensity that made me pause. An idea sparked in my mind, sharp and dangerous. If anyone had the power to shake Emma's carefully curated world, it was her new mother-in-law. I slipped into the empty chair beside her, setting my glass down on the white linen tablecloth. "Mrs. Thompson, right?" I said, flashing a polite smile. She blinked clearly, caught off guard, but quickly recovered, her eyes narrowing slightly as she gave me a thin-lipped smile. "Yes, and you're Alex," I said, leaning in just a bit, "Emma's sister. Though I suppose you wouldn't know that, considering I've been seated closer to the coat check than the family table." Her lips twitched, a hint of a smile breaking through the icy mask. I did notice that she said, her voice low and slightly amused. I took a slow sip of my drink, watching her over the rim of my glass. Funny thing about families, they love to present a united front, but behind closed doors, well, let's just say things aren't always as perfect as they seem. Her eyes sharpened the cool, calculating look of a woman who had spent decades navigating high society dinners and corporate boardrooms. "Oh," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Is that so?" I leaned in, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'd keep an eye on Emma if I were you. She's not exactly the picture-perfect daughter-in-law she pretends to be." She raised an eyebrow, her fingers tightening slightly around her champagne flute. "And why is that?" I smiled, letting the moment stretch just long enough to leave her curious, her mind no doubt already racing with the possibilities. "Oh, I'm sure you'll find out soon enough." With that, I stood, giving her a little nod before slipping back into the crowd, feeling her eyes on my back the entire way. The second spark had landed. The fire was spreading, and I could already see the cracks forming in Emma's perfect little glass castle. The dance floor was a swirl of laughter, clinking glasses and the soft glow of fairy lights as the band transitioned into a slow, romantic number. Couples swayed together, their faces flushed with wine and joy, while I hovered at the edge of the chaos, my mind whirring with possibilities. I had set the stage. The sparks were already catching. Sarah's pointed speech, my mother's nervous glances, and Mrs. Thompson's newly piqued curiosity. Now it was time to really push things over the edge. I spotted Emma, her white dress flowing like a wave as she made her way toward the bar, her smile strained, her eyes darting around as if she could sense the cracks forming in her perfect day. I followed her, slipping into the empty space beside her as she leaned against the bar, her manicured fingers tapping anxiously against the polished wood. "Rough crowd," I said, flashing a smile as she glanced at me, her eyes narrowing. "What do you want, Alex?" she muttered, clearly in no mood for small talk. I took a slow sip of my champagne, savoring the bubbles as they popped against my tongue. Just checking in. You know, making sure the star of the show is still shining. She rolled her eyes, her shoulders tensing. "I don't have time for this." I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough to make her lean closer, her eyes flicking nervously around the crowded bar. "Careful, Em. You wouldn't want anyone to catch on to the real you." Her head snapped around, her eyes narrowing into slits. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, the warmth of the champagne making my pulse quicken. "Oh, come on. You know exactly what I mean. All those little secrets you've been hiding, the ones you hoped would never come back to haunt you." For a moment, she just stared at me, her jaw clenched so tightly I thought her teeth might crack. Then she forced a tight, humorless smile, her eyes darting to where Adam was chatting with his groomsmen near the head table. "You're bluffing," she hissed, her voice low and sharp. I shrugged, taking another sip of my drink. "Maybe? But are you really willing to take that chance?" She opened her mouth, no doubt ready to snap back, but before she could, the DJ's voice crackled over the speakers, calling everyone's attention to the dance floor. And now it's time for a special moment. The bouquet toss. Bridesmaids, single ladies gather around. Emma's face tightened, her eyes flashing with something close to panic. She shot me one last venomous glare before turning on her heel and marching back toward the center of the room, her dress trailing like a storm cloud behind her. I watched her go, my mind racing. This was it. The perfect moment to push things just a little further, to crack the final fragile layer of her perfect bride act. As the bridesmaids and single women crowded around the center of the dance floor, I slipped through the guests, weaving my way toward the DJ booth. The young guy behind the turntables gave me a puzzled look as I approached, his headphones slung around his neck. "Hey," I said, flashing him my best, slightly tipsy smile. "Mind if I make a quick announcement? Family thing." He hesitated, glancing at the wedding planner hovering nearby, but when I slipped a crisp bill into his hand, he gave a quick nod, leaning down to adjust the mic. "All right, folks, before we get to the bouquet toss, I just want to say a few quick words about the bride," I said, my voice ringing out over the speakers. The room fell quiet, hundreds of eyes turning toward me. The spotlight suddenly hot on my face. I felt my heart slam against my ribs, but I pushed down the nerves, letting my smile widen into something dangerously close to a smirk. "Emma has always been the star of the family," I continued, my voice steady, each word carefully measured. "She's the one who lights up every room, the one who always makes sure she's the center of attention. And today, I just want to celebrate that, to remind everyone of all those unforgettable moments she's given us over the years." I caught her eye across the dance floor, her face frozen in a mask of carefully controlled panic. "So if you all could just direct your attention to the screens behind me," I said, my voice bright and cheerful. "I've put together a little montage, a tribute to the Emma we all know and love." There was a beat of confused silence as the screens flickered to life, the band's soft music fading into the background as the first image appeared. Emma, 25th birthday, pouring champagne straight into someone's mouth, her eyes wild with laughter. The crowd murmured, a few nervous giggles breaking out as the slideshow continued, Emma leaning into a guy who definitely wasn't Adam, her lips inches from his ear. Emma dancing on a table, her hair a wild tangled mess as her friends cheered her on. I watched as the color drained from her face, her eyes widening in horror as the images flashed by one after another, each more damning than the last. The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the sharp, panicked sound of Emma's voice cutting through the crowd. "Turn it off! Turn it off now!" she shrieked, pushing through the stunned guests, her dress tangling around her legs as she stumbled toward the DJ booth. But it was too late. The damage was done. The perfect polished image she had worked so hard to cultivate shattered. In an instant, the whispers spreading like wildfire through the room. I felt a strange, icy satisfaction settle in my chest as I slipped back into the shadows, watching as Emma's world crumbled around her. As the final image flickered off the screen, the room fell into an uneasy silence, the guests staring at each other in shocked disbelief. I caught my father's horrified expression, my mother's trembling hand as she clutched at her pearls, and Adam's stony, unreadable face as he turned to stare at his new wife. I took a slow, steadying breath, my pulse still racing, my fingers tingling with adrenaline. The fuse had ignited. Now all I had to do was sit back and watch the fireworks. The silence that followed my little tribute felt like the calm before a storm, thick, oppressive, and humming with barely contained chaos. For a heartbeat, the entire ballroom seemed frozen. The guests caught between shock and disbelief, their eyes darting from the screens to Emma, who stood rooted in the center of the dance floor, her face a mask of horror. Then, like a dam breaking, the whispers started, hushed, frantic exchanges spreading through the crowd like wildfire. I could see Emma's friends glancing nervously at each other, their faces pale, their carefully curated smiles slipping as they realized their own party photos might have just become public knowledge. I leaned back against the wall, my heart still racing, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my lips. This was the moment I had been building toward the point of no return. Emma's mother-in-law, Mrs. Thompson, was the first to break the stillness, her sharp, icy voice slicing through the tension. "Emma," she said, her tone dripping with controlled fury. "What exactly are we looking at?" Emma spun toward her, her cheeks flushed, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I don't know, this is some kind of mistake." But the damage was done. Adam, who had been standing beside his groomsmen, his face an unreadable mask, stepped forward. His eyes locked on Emma with a cold, dangerous intensity. "Emma," he said, his voice low and tight, barely controlled. "Care to explain what I just saw?" Emma's eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for support, but the walls were closing in. Even her bridesmaids, her closest allies, had taken a few cautious steps back, their expressions a mix of shock and thinly veiled judgment. It was a long time ago," she stammered, her voice high, and strained, her perfectly manicured hands fluttering nervously at her sides. "Before we were even serious, Adam. It means nothing." I felt a dark, bitter satisfaction settle in my chest as I watched the scene unfold. This was what she deserved, to finally face the consequences of the lies and manipulation she had built her life around. But Adam didn't seem convinced. His jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck flexing as he took another step closer, his eyes never leaving Emma's panicked face. "Nothing." He repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "So I'm supposed to believe that these photos, you all over some random guy acting like you're the star of some trashy reality show, mean nothing?" Emma's face crumpled, her eyes filling with tears as she reached for him, her fingers trembling. "Adam, please. You know I love you. I've always loved you." He jerked back, his expression twisting into something cold and unrecognizable. "Then why didn't you tell me about this? Why did I have to find out like this in front of everyone?" The room fell into a tense, expectant silence, every eye locked on the imploding couple, the whispers dying away as the guests leaned in hungry for the next blow. Emma let out a strangled sob, her perfectly curated mask finally shattering as she stumbled back a step, her hands covering her face. "I didn't want to ruin this," she whispered, her voice muffled behind her shaking hands. "I didn't want to ruin us." I felt a flicker of something almost like pity stir in my chest, but I smothered it quickly, remembering the years of being pushed aside, forgotten, treated like an afterthought in my own family. She had brought this on herself. Adam let out a harsh, bitter laugh, his eyes flashing with a mix of hurt and fury. "Ruin us, Emma? You did that the moment you started lying to me?" I watched as Emma's mother, who had been hovering near the head table, her face a ghostly shade of white, finally snapped out of her daze. She rushed forward, her heels clicking frantically against the polished floor. "Adam, please," she said, her voice high and panicked. "This is just a misunderstanding. Emma loves you, she's just emotional." Adam's eyes snapped to her, his jaw tightening further. "Oh, I'm sure she's emotional," he said, his voice dripping with icy sarcasm. "But that doesn't change what I just saw." He turned back to Emma, his eyes narrowing. "Did you even want to marry me, or was this just another one of your performances?" Emma's face crumpled, her perfectly lined mascara smudging as the tears finally broke free. "Adam, no. I love you, I chose you." He shook his head, a bitter smile twisting his lips. "Chose me, or chose the image of a perfect husband, a perfect life." The silence that followed felt deafening, the room hanging on his every word. Adam took a step back, his eyes flicking around the stunned, silent crowd. "Enjoy the rest of the party?" "Everyone," he said, his voice cold and clipped. "I'm done." With that, he turned on his heel, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor as he strode out of the ballroom, the heavy double doors slamming shut behind him. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then, like a flock of startled birds, the guests erupted into frantic, hushed conversations, the once celebratory atmosphere shattered beyond repair. I watched as Emma crumpled to the floor, her white dress pooling around her like the remnants of a broken dream. Her sobs echoing through the room as her perfect, carefully constructed world came crashing down around her. I took a deep, steadying breath, feeling a strange, quiet sense of closure settle over me. It wasn't just about the hallway seat or the years of being overlooked. It was about finally stepping out of the shadows, finally claiming my place at the center of my own story. As I slipped out of the ballroom, the cool night air hitting my flushed cheeks, I felt lighter, freer than I had in years. I had done what they always said I couldn't. I had taken control. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the forgotten sibling. The one left on the sidelines, I felt powerful. As the heavy doors swung shut behind me, muffling the frantic voices and sobbing bride, I smiled to myself, the taste of victory sharp and sweet on my tongue. They had made me the outsider, but I had just rewritten the story. Story 2. Alex is my name. Any member of my family would likely characterize me as the quiet one, if you questioned them. I am 29 years old. The person who never quite figured it out is much worse. I've never demanded much and have always been low maintenance. The golden child wasn't me. Either my younger sister Rachel, who is almost a professional social butterfly with a Pinterest-perfect existence, or my elder brother Nathan, who followed dad into finance, should have that title. Me. I took my own route, developed a modest, primarily remote software profession. Good compensation. I never boasted about it either. I didn't aware that my family didn't just ignore me. Even though I enjoyed staying beneath the radar, I was viewed by them as a joke. It began in the same manner as usual. In the family group chat, Mom sent a text. This Friday is Alex's birthday supper. Any recommendations? That was all okay. I was even a bit optimistic. Perhaps things would be different this year. Perhaps they would recall that I don't consume meat. Alternatively, I may have highlighted a recently established downtown establishment. Then the response began. Nathan, let's not go too elaborate, save the nice spots for actual success, Rachel added. LOL, true buffet. Mom just gave both texts a thumbs up in response. Nobody inquired about my desires. Nobody inquired about my plans. They made the choice and I accepted it as I always do. Friday then arrives. I arrive at the depressing tiny buffet, sticky tables, and dim lighting. The type of establishment where the sneeze guard is older than the majority of the employees. Half of the platters had already been consumed by everyone seated. No cake, no decorations. My Uncle Frank gave me a half-hearted, "Hi, birthday boy," in between lukewarm mac and cheese nibbles. I tried not to take it personally. Nodded, smiled, and sat down. I've grown accustomed to being in the background, but then the card arrived. The envelope was simply white. The front has no handwriting on it. Within a basic cursive happy birthday greeting, and beneath someone has scrawled in blue pen, "Perhaps you'll accomplish something noteworthy the next year." For a moment, I gazed at it, the way Nathan chuckled and Rachel sipped her drink and remarked, "Just a little motivation," as well as the way Mom grinned. Seemed brilliant to me, but I believed it was a joke. It wasn't a joke. They truly thought I was the one who never quite measured up. Because of it, I remained silent. I simply grinned and quickly snapped a picture of the card on the table with the inexpensive buffet dishes in the backdrop using my phone. Everyone in my family chuckles. After that, I got up, put the card down again, and thanked them for supper, calm without wrath or sarcasm. Before anyone could respond, I left. The loudest part of the night was most likely the stillness that ensued. Nobody pursued me. Nobody sent a text. I took a seat in my vehicle. I spent a lot of time staring at the pictures that were still on my phone's screen. The night changed in me. For some reason, I wasn't upset. Not at all. I had had enough of being the quiet one. I'm tired of serving as their scapegoat for all of the family's unsaid conflicts. I had been working on something they were unaware of for the past 3 years, contracts for freelance work, licensing agreements. Behind the scenes, a modest side project had gained momentum. I didn't need their approval, therefore I hadn't told them. However, I now understood that I also didn't want them around. The group chat glowed brightly like a Christmas tree. 3 days later, Rachel was the first to do it. Then did anybody else suddenly lose access to Netflix? Nathan, Spotify, and HBO? What's happening? Mom went after it. The Dropbox link for the family images is no longer accessible to me. Dad, who seldom ever texted, eventually added that the Wi-Fi had gone down. "Could you check the account?" "Alex," I didn't respond. "Not quite yet." I hoped they would stew a little. They were unaware that since 2020, my name has been associated with every streaming service cloud account and electricity bill. I discreetly volunteered to help them get back on their feet when Dad got laid off. I didn't mention it. I saved the receipts, even though I never asked for anything, and I was done being the supporting cast member of a family that only acknowledged me when something needed to be fixed. But it wasn't the electricity bill or Netflix that truly set them on fire. I sent the SMS that evening. Just one message, just one picture I captured, the same picture at the buffet. No caption, only the picture. It was sufficient. Nathan was the first to respond. Really? Adult up? Alex, next mom. Are you really doing this over a birthday card? Rachel added. It was a joke. You're being so dramatic I didn't answer. I got offline fully banned. The group chat muted their phones and went about my day. But that quiet. It didn't last long because what they hadn't realized yet, what would hit them like a brick the next morning, was that I hadn't just cut off their creature comforts. I'd pulled the plug on something else completely. By Wednesday morning, I woke up to above 30 missed calls. My phone was buzzing incessantly, like it had a particular grudge. I didn't answer any of them, but I scrolled through the voicemails, each more frantic than the previous. Alex, honey, call me back. Your father is trying to get in touch with the bank and nothing's going through. Hey, buddy. I'm not wanting to quarrel or anything, but we're attempting to log into the shared drive for the tax things. Where is everything? Alex, this is serious. The mortgage payment bounced. Dad claims your name is still on the account. What's happening? That one made me pause. They eventually recognized what they had let slip through their fingers 3 years earlier when things weren't going so great for the family. When Dad got laid off. When Rachel had to drop out of grad school for a semester. When Nathan lost a portion of his cash on some can't-miss crypto scam. I discreetly stepped up. I had just earned a huge freelancing job with a startup that burst shortly after. I didn't create a fuss, I didn't demand attention. I merely volunteered to help. I allowed the invoices get redirected via my accounts. Took up the mortgage to prevent them from default, added everyone to my family plan, covered subscriptions, cloud storage, even the security system. Not because they asked, but because I assumed that's what family did. And not once did anyone say thank you. They viewed it like a favor. I owed them. The instant I removed myself from that invisible framework, their whole building started to fall. And the reality is, I didn't do it to hurt them. I did that to protect myself. However, the suffering that was a consequence, the first to change strategies was Rachel. In a lengthy, remorseful voicemail, she told me that we had all made errors, that the card didn't signify anything, and that perhaps it was time for us to all sit down and have some adult conversations. She included a casual as well. By the way, you have my undying admiration, as if she had just forgotten to mention it for the previous 5 years. Then Mom sent another brief clipped text. Because of a miscommunication. You're penalizing your entire family? Adults don't act like this. It hurt. It seemed so familiar, but not because I believed it. She did it by default. Every time someone deviated from the family's script. Reduce the offense, assign blame, make the response seem illogical. With a single response, I ended my quiet. No one is being punished by me. I've finished being invisible until you require my assistance. You all said how you felt. I'm building mine now. For a whole day, nobody responded. Then Nathan arrived, nor a voicemail, nor a text. He arrived. I was in my flat. A little silence mine, I hadn't informed them. 6 months ago. I relocated mostly because I assumed no one would be interested, but I suppose that because I assisted him in setting up a tax form, he still had the previous address on file. I disregarded the beep when I heard it. Then it knocked. Then it became louder knocking. He was there when I finally opened the door. Dressed as though he had just left work, my golden boy brother was carrying a 6-pack of whatever he thought I still drank. Can we have a conversation? He inquired. I rested my weight on the doorframe. Are you here now? Proceed. He let out a groan and made an uncomfortable weight transfer. See, that meal wasn't intended to be an assault. It was a joke. Around you, we all make jokes, just... You never say anything. So how can we tell when something is truly bothering you? That was the time I recognized then that he didn't understand. Not one of them did. They had created a world in which my lack of protest was taken as consent and my quiet as weakness. It's not appropriate to treat someone like trash and then claim that you said nothing. Decency doesn't work like that. I responded. He was taken aback as if the thought had never crossed his mind. All okay, fair. What do you desire then? I left the question open-ended. What was it that I desired? An expression of regret. No, not at all. If it arrived today, I doubted I would believe it. Perhaps respect. However coerced. Respect was also not genuine. Distance was what I want. Liberty. A life free from being bound by a group of people who never knew my name until a bill was due. I don't want anything. I answered. The point is that Nathan's face changed from bewilderment to a look of disdain. Is it really your intention to ignore your entire family over a birthday card? No, I'm finally holding you accountable for taking me for granted for 3 years. I said, meeting his gaze. It was only the receipt on that card. For a moment, he stood as if he had something more to say. Then he walked off, leaving the six-pack on the ground. I sat on my couch that night, finally at peace, and didn't pick it up. Not because I had received retribution. For once, I had chosen myself. Not because I had caused them pain. I had lost all knowledge of anyone. Not silence, not money, not explanations. However, the fallout was only getting started. I discovered my father's voicemail the following morning. He hardly ever gave me a call. He was more collective man who texts and nods silently. I could hear the frustration simmering beneath the gravelly, unusually calm tone of his voice as he delivered the message. Your mother is upset. Alex, your sister is crying. Your point has been made. Be a man now and make this right. You don't give up on your family when it becomes inconvenient. I give it 2 listens. That sentence, fix this and be a man, rang like a warning bell inside my skull. It wasn't a request. There was no negotiation at all. It was an order. The same one with whom I had grown up, rooted in control but disguised as concern. It was always that way with Dad. He didn't scream or strike. Even though he wasn't the one paying the bills, he was able to remind you who did. His sincere belief that I still owed him was the part that, if it weren't so pitiful, would have made me laugh. After everything. After covering the mortgage for 3 years, handling Mom's overdue hospital bills when her insurance lapsed, paying off Rachel's busted credit card after she accidentally used the wrong one. I had receipts for everything. I'd been the family backbone and they only realized it when I stepped away. Later that day, Mom sent me a Facebook message. She never used it for anything more than cat videos and reposting church event flyers, so I knew it was intentional. The message was short-clipped, like she was trying to hold on to the last bit of moral high ground she had left. We're struggling. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but it's not too late to put things right. Your father says we may still refinance using your name on the paperwork if we miss another payment. We might lose the house. Please think about your family, that house, the one I grew up in. The one they refurbished with money they didn't have while I was living in a shoebox apartment just out of college. The one I held afloat when Dad's pride wouldn't let him accept we were sinking. That house has never felt like mine, even when I paid for it. And now, they asked me to come back and save it again. I didn't respond. Instead, I started accumulating records, not because I was going to aid them, but because I wanted to protect myself. You see, I never formally turned over financial obligation. The utilities, the streaming services, even the loan I co-signed for Rachel's short-lived bakery ambition. They were all still legally related to me. I would bear the consequences if they defaulted. What frightens me the most is that, not because they were manipulative or entitled, but because they had subtly and thoroughly merged their life into mine without offering me a voice. I thus called the energy provider, canceled the cosign, and legally removed myself from the account. I then shut down my credit profile and froze all accounts that weren't exclusively mine. I was no longer just leaving, I was closing the door after myself. After 2 days, I received a last communication that completely stopped me cold. Grandma was the source. The only family member who ever made me feel important was her, simply because I was myself. When I was grounded for retaliating, she would slip me chocolate. And even if it was only a card with a hand-drawn sketch, she never forgot a single birthday. And I will always adore you. However, her text was different. I heard the events. I wish they had my perspective on you. I miss you, Alex, but I don't blame you. Please try not to get too hardened by their stupidity. You're a decent dude. Remember that? I spent a lot of time sitting with that one. I drove over to her apartment the following day and brought her some flowers and her favorite cinnamon buns. Before she spoke, we sat on the porch in quiet for a long time. She sipped her tea and whispered, "They don't deserve you, however they will soon come crawling." Eventually, pride inevitably yields to desperation. She was correct, since they had been utilizing the emergency credit line behind my back the day after I formally cut it off. Nathan wasn't the one who knocked on my door again. Rachel was the one. She had changed appearance. Not the polished person she usually is. No cosmetics, leggings, hoodie, and puffy eyes, holding a grocery bag made of plastic as a gesture of goodwill. "I brought food," she added in a hoarse voice, "and all I wanted to do was converse." Please, I remained still. Not initially. I studied her as though I didn't know her, because I didn't in many respects, and I kept my hand on the door frame. It was something in her face, but not really. Sincere or just excellent. I stepped aside out of desperation. As if she hadn't anticipated coming this far, she entered, set the bag on the kitchen counter, and peered about. "We made a mistake, okay? Alex, we made a huge mistake." I remained silent, simply observed her. She cast her gaze downward. "I won't pretend that we didn't say some terrible things." The card made me giggle. I can't take back the words I uttered. "I've been self-centered. However, I had no idea how much you cared for us all. I didn't want to know, therefore I didn't know. It was simpler to assume that you were the silent one who had nothing going on." Her eyes were hazy as she gazed up. "However, it was you that kept everything together." And suddenly, everything is collapsing. Suddenly, the room became silent. She was correct. It was disintegrating, and I sensed the imminence of the moment. She had requested me to mend it. In that instance, however, I had changed since last week when I sat calmly at that buffet table. I gave Rachel a long look before responding. She twitched beneath my stillness, biting her lower lip as if she were waiting for an unlanded punch. As if to avoid the charge, she added softly, "I didn't come here to beg. I reasoned that perhaps you might change your perspective if you realized where we were coming from." I inquired that unless I do anything that meets your definition of success, I'm not worthy of celebration. That when the Wi-Fi goes down or a bill arrives, you all remember me. She grimaced. "We assumed you were okay with it, even though I knew it was terrible. You never resisted. We never heard from you. You just made a difference, as if it didn't count." At last I took a seat. I could sense the tightness in my voice, even though it was level. Words that have been unsaid for years are now struggling to be heard. "What's humorous, do you?" I added that I once believed it to be irrelevant as well. I used to believe that keeping quiet was simply simpler to do my role. Give the awards to Nathan. Give yourself the attention. Let mom and dad seem like I had no ambition and was simply a lost soul. I never gave a damn about becoming recognized. But you know what struck me at last? It wasn't that I was unimportant. You all agreed on that. You were okay with me not doing that. Her shoulders were hunched as if she were attempting to shrink under the weight of everything as she sat down across from me. She said weakly, "I guess we thought you liked being in the background. As if you were simply unique." "No," I said. "The background was created for me each time I accomplished something significant. They dismissed it or renamed it luck. Your next big trip or one of Nathan's promotions overshadowed every small victory I served as the wall of emotional support. And you never once looked down to see who was supporting your house when you all built it on top of me." I picked up the bag she brought and went to the counter. I had takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant inside. More than a year ago, I casually said in a text, "It was the first time anyone in the family had remembered something so specific about me. I appreciate this," I said, setting the bag back down. "But a bag of curry doesn't fix years of being treated like I don't count." "I know," she said quickly. "I know it doesn't, but it's not supposed to fix anything. It's just a start." I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. "Do you remember when I helped you with your bakery?" I inquired. Her eyes flickered. "Yeah. Do you know how many loans I had to defer to front that $15,000? She swallowed hard. "No, I didn't." "Of course you didn't. Because you never asked. No one ever did." She glanced at me with something like embarrassment, but also maybe for the first time actual comprehension. "You want me to come back," I said to the group, "chat to the bills, to the support system you all relied on. But you never once asked me how I was doing. You never once treated me like someone who had his own life, his own obligations, his own aspirations. You want the version of me that says yes and grins as you laugh in my face?" "I don't," she said fast. "I promise I don't. I want this version. the one who eventually gives us the truth. For a second, I believed her. However, that was no longer sufficient. "I'm not returning silently," I said. Her gaze expanded. "I'm done serving as your safety net. Alex, I've deleted my name from everything and shut down all shared services. You will be responsible for paying your own costs. Rebuild your own credit. It's not for you that I do it." She appeared to want to protest but was unable to do so. I went on. "I don't hate you. I won't allow you to continue using me, but I'm also not doing this to punish you. I am worthy of more than sympathy and guilt-tripping allegiance. I'm worthy of respect." "You have my respect," she muttered. Then I said, "Let me go. Have enough respect for me to let me go." She nodded slowly, despite the tears in her eyes. "Are you ever going to return?" she inquired. I gave a headshake. "At least not until I'm seen as someone you genuinely desire in your life, not simply someone you require." She got up. She took up the food bag with trembling hands. She extended it toward me. "Keep it," she said. "Please eat something even if you don't want to see us again." I accepted it. When she went, that was the one thing I agreed to. After she left, I shut the door and I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders for the first time in years. The flat was no longer a place of emptiness. It was quiet. For the following 3 weeks. I was almost alone. There were no group discussions, urgent phone calls, or duties that pulled me in any direction other than my own. I built my life throughout that period. Something specifically for me, I agreed to a new remote contract with a Swedish software company. I paid off my remaining delayed loans, even made travel arrangements to Kyoto. Alone, I'd wanted to do this since college. They didn't know I wasn't bluffing for a long time. Nathan sent one final message. "Your point has been made. Remember the people who have helped you get to where you are." Though I didn't respond, I just took a screenshot of the notice and saved it in a folder that I have since named Noise. The next year, Mom sent a birthday card. "Don't make jokes." It was only a handwritten letter. "I apologize. You are missed. Mom, love." I also didn't answer that. I learned something important, not because I was resentful. It's possible to forgive someone without allowing them to harm you again. I received a letter from Grandma 6 months later. A tiny square snapshot of the two of us sitting on her porch with a cinnamon toast in hand and tulips on her lap was inside. She had scribbled in her shaky handwriting on the back, "You don't have to give them your peace, but they're learning slowly. Continue. You have my admiration." I framed that when I currently reside in a bright flat in Stockholm. I have a fantastic little crew. Every morning I take a coffee and stroll to a neighboring lake where I've resumed painting. I still keep my success to myself. I no longer need people to see me in order to feel noticed. Therefore, I don't publish modest boasts or make subliminal clues or collective threats. I recognize myself, and that's plenty. Story 3. I'm Marcus, and I'm 32. And my family members would definitely characterize me as quiet if you asked them to. Not in an introspective, enigmatic manner. Just the one that never truly takes up space, never raises his voice, and never creates trouble. As if I were a domestic utility. My mother has a tendency of referring to me as the assistants. With a half smile, she says it, as if she's pleased. However, her tone is always contemptuous, as if she were talking about a coffee table that had been for ages beneficial, recognizable, and simple to forget. Except when it gets in the way. The golden child wasn't me. Melanie, my younger sister, played that role. The professional attention getter who may wind up on the family Christmas card cover after blinking at a camera. Then there was Jared, my elder brother, loud and charismatic. He never paid for his own alcohol and always had a tale to tell. Me, I'm employed in data analysis. Live by yourself. No drama, no children, just a good credit score and a clean refrigerator. My cousin Emily got engaged a few months ago, which is where this narrative begins. Now, Emily and I don't really get along. At one point, she called me the person who works with computers or numbers or whatever. However, she invited me to a fancy downtown restaurant for her engagement dinner. The email list under +1 optional if you can find someone had my name, Emily Classic. I did, however, RSVP. Yes. There was a part of me that hoped things may be different. My folks would be present, along with a few aunts, uncles, and other relatives. Jared and Melanie were also there. Most of them I hadn't seen in months. I reasoned that it would be courteous to show up. My ex used to claim that I looked like a CEO in training when I wore the blue blazer. I saw right away that everyone was sitting when I got there. Not all of them, actually. One seat remained vacant. It was a tiny, crooked bar stool, the sort where the light flickers between the staff kitchen and the lavatory door. Waiters are constantly rubbing trays against your back, and the air has a little industrial soap odor. My mother waved Marcus over here when she saw me. She made the call and then added her loud stage whisper, which she employs to make it sound like she's kidding, but isn't. Take a seat. It is nearer the exit. In this manner, you avoid damaging any pictures. A few people looked around. Behind her wine glass, my sister laughed. Jared grinned. My father continued to munch without raising his eyes. I stood there for a while, taking everything in without saying a word. Then I approached Drew out the stool and sat silently. I attempted to feel the heat in my cheeks to keep cool during supper. Folded my napkin gently and grinned at the waiter. I didn't say much. The discussion drifted around me, and I just listened. Announcements of a baby, wedding preparations, and tales from Jared's most recent vacation to Cancun. I was pleased of a predictive model I created for a significant logistics firm when I attempted to comment on a recent assignment. "Wow!" exclaimed Melanie, blinking. "That sounds complicated." The conversation suddenly turned back to Jared's recent tattoo. A toast to Emily and her fiancé was once made by a family friend clinking glasses. My chair swayed. I felt like a piece of furniture, just a solid foundation. Jared ordered 2 rounds of drinks for the table, and I watched. Without checking the price, my dad ordered the chef's special. The server was requested to package 3 additional desserts for my mom to take home for later. The check then arrived. In the center of the table was a sleek black folder. After a moment of hesitation, the waiter shouted it right in front of me. Everyone fell silent. Slowly, I raised my gaze. Melanie gave a blink. Jared's eyes were fixed on his phone. My mother remarked, "You don't mind, do you?" while clearing her throat. "You always handle money so responsibly." I added calmly, "Don't worry, I wouldn't dare ruin the symmetry of your check either," as I leaned back in my wobbly little stool. Then I got to my feet. Nobody made a move. Melanie hissed and I heard it. "Even so, what does that mean?" she muttered. When Jared did glance up, he whispered, "Dude, chill." However, I had already started to go toward the entrance. I didn't bid them farewell. Didn't turn around. Simply strolled outside into the cool evening breeze. Behind me, I could hear the noises of muted disputes starting to bubble. It was not the first time such an incident has occurred. Something about that moment, but not even near about the expectation, about the stillness. The fact that nobody even asked if I should cover everyone's expenses, it struck in a different way, and I sensed a change for the first time in my adult life. Not rage. That's right. Not even grief. Just a calculated finality, silent. It's like turning the final page of a book you've been reading for years out of duty. I didn't immediately return home. Rather, I strolled 2 blocks to a little 24-hour diner that had a fragrance similar to pancake syrup and burned coffee. The type of establishment that didn't give a damn about your identity or attire. You only requested a booth and perhaps a few refills. I opened my phone, got a black coffee, and sat in the corner. Mom had already texted messages in the family group chat, "Marcus, that was impolite. At least you could have made an offer." Jared sent a text. "A very sophisticated dude, leaving us dangling in public like that." Melanie sent a text. "Be less theatrical. After one supper, nothing happened." Nobody expressed regret. Nobody claimed to understand. Just a silent hope that I would be the one to assist again. The simple one. They may make fun of it. In the same sentence, lean on and disregard. For several minutes, I gazed at the screen. I looked at something else after opening my banking app. While Jared was taking unaffordable holidays, and Melanie was sharing unpacking hauls from expensive labels she couldn't pronounce. A healthy savings account had been meticulously accumulated over the previous 10 years. Alone in silence, I had been constructing something solid. Perhaps though it was time to cease being so silent, I began plucking threads the following morning. I started by removing Jared as an authorized user over the phone with my credit card provider. 3 years earlier, when he only required a short-term bump to the score, I had promised to do him that favor. He had earned thousands of dollars from streaming services, takeout and bar charges, although he consistently claimed to be working things out. On the line was my name. No more. I then went to the family's Netflix account and signed in. Indeed, the billing profile had the name of whom? Mine. Thus, I modified the password. Next is the family plan for Disney plus Spotify. Amazon Prime was shared. I took back one by one the items that they had sloppily thought belonged to everyone but actually belonged to me. The big one came next. You see, I had consented to co-sign a modest business loan my parents were taking out to grow my dad's landscaping firm around a year ago, after much begging on their part. They couldn't be approved by the bank alone. With my signature, it went through even though that credit had inconsistent income. Not even a thank you letter was sent to me. I recalled the provision that permitted a co-sign owner to start a liability review during the first 12 months of that loan, which was still in its early phases. Technically, it was legal if fraud or misrepresentation could be proven, but it was uncommon and hidden in fine print. Thus, I engaged a lawyer. It wasn't even about bankrupting the company or ruining their credit. I had no desire for vengeance. Not in the sense of fire and brimstone. Distance, legal, financial, emotional, and a fresh start were what I desired. In the meantime, the texts continued to arrive. Mom sent an SMS. Your father's dream is this. Don't let a dinner check ruin it. Melanie sent a text. Are you really interrupting us because of a single offensive joke? Jared sent a text. Regarding this, you're acting like a little girl. Adult up. The best one, however, was when Emily, the soon-to-be bride, left me a voicemail 2 days later. Marcus. Hello. I've heard that the dinner became tense. I wanted to inform you that the wedding guest list is currently being finalized. We're going to have to decline your invitation because there isn't much room. I hope you get it. Click no shock, no anger, just some clarity that gave me the last push I required. I launched a private browser window and began researching something I had been secretly hoping to do for years. Relocating actually means going to a different state, not just a different neighborhood. Perhaps even outside the nation. Somewhere I wasn't required to be a supporting character in someone else's narrative. I might just be Marcus somewhere. I sent one last message to the family group chat later that week. No threats. No explanations. Just please remove me from any future financial obligations or shared accounts. All access has been revoked. I wish you the best. Moving forward. Melanie left a thumbs down emoji. Jared replied. LOL? Okay. My mom didn't respond at all. I waited that Friday, my dad called, I let it ring out, then he texted me, can we talk about the loan thing? It's urgent. Then Jared called. Then Melanie. By the time Monday rolled around, I had 17 missed calls and 4 emails with subject lines like family emergency. Please call, and we need to resolve this ASAP. But I was already 3 states away, sipping a hotel coffee and watching the sunrise from a balcony I'd paid for with my own money with zero guilt. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. They weren't just mad, they were scared. And the best part, I hadn't even played my final card yet. I spent the next 2 weeks in Asheville, North Carolina. It was supposed to be a pit stop, a breather before I figured out my next move. But the crisp mountain air and quiet pace suited me. The silence from my family didn't last long. It started with guilt. Mom sent an SMS. I just don't understand why you're punishing all of us. We love you. Marcus. Families argue. It doesn't mean you run away. Then it turned manipulative. Melanie sent a text. I hope you're happy. Dad's losing sleep over this. Jared's credit score dropped, and don't even get me started on Mom. She's sick with worry. And finally, when none of that worked, came the fury. Jared sent a text. You seriously think you're better than us now? You think money makes you important? You're just a bitter little worm who got lucky with a boring desk job. That one actually made me laugh. It was so on brand, so cartoonishly predictable, I nearly spilled my coffee. Meanwhile, the fallout was growing behind the scenes. Remember the business loan I co-signed? My lawyer had uncovered that they had misrepresented their projected income and fabricated some invoice totals. That alone didn't trigger legal action, but it did flag the loan for reassessment. When the bank caught wind, they initiated a formal review and froze access to the remaining funds until it was sorted out. That meant the renovation project they'd started, new trucks, new office space, some flashy landscaping equipment was now half finished and hemorrhaging cash. My dad had tied up their savings into the expansion without access to the full loan. They were in trouble. I knew all of this because one of my cousins, Erica, had quietly reached out. She wasn't part of the engagement dinner drama. She'd been traveling for work but heard the stories flying around the family group chats. She called me one night and said, "Okay, I've stayed out of it long enough." "What actually happened, Marcus?" "Because they're making it sound like you went full villain." So I told her everything. Not in a rant, not with fury, just facts. What they said, what they did. How they treated me like a wallet with ears. How after years of being their backup plan, I finally said no. There was a long stillness on the line, then she added gently, "I believe you, and I'm sorry I wasn't there." We spoke for an hour. It was the first meaningful chat I'd had with a family member in months. That didn't leave me feeling smaller when we hung up. I spent a lot of time staring at the ceiling and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Yet I didn't weep, observed. The wedding followed. Emily's, even with the previous uninvite, my mom's Gmail still occasionally forwards emails to me, last-minute information registry connections. Seating charts have been updated. I suppose no one had considered taking me out by hand. I learned that Jared was making a toast in this way. I made a final attempt when Melanie was a bridesmaid and my dad was paying for the photographer's premium package. A calculated low-key joke. As you can see, Brian, Emily's fiancé, is employed at a mid-sized computer business in marketing. He has ambition. Out loud. Additionally, I recently learned this after a little LinkedIn research. I'm also looking for a new position at my organization. For a job that was only 2 teams over for mine, he was really 2 rounds into the interview process. The way the cosmos presently plays its cards is funny. I was not trying to ruin his chances. I made a point of bringing it up in a call with HR, even though I didn't have to. Due diligence is more important than gossip. "Hey," I remarked nonchalantly. "Brian Jenkins is in the last stages then. Just so you know, we have socially crossed paths. It's only a familial link, nothing major. He may recognize me as the reserved one." However, complete disclosure and everything, HR acknowledged it and thanked me. That was it, not a drama. Don't push. However, it indicated that they dig and what they would discover. Particularly the appearance of his name on some of Jared's more colorful postings on social media. They might even halt. This fool slipped on the bill and set the family loan on fire. Especially the one earlier that week, when Jared sent a grainy picture of me from a wedding years ago with the message, "Some folks, I suppose, were destined to be letdowns." Melanie Emily was tagged. Bryant. Public. No filter. I didn't have to do any work. Asheville again. At last, I signed the lease for a modest yet contemporary flat with a view of the river. Quiet neighbors, spotless walls, and plenty room to stretch and reflect. On the morning of the ceremony, 2 days prior to the wedding, I moved in. I had 15 missed calls when I woke up. Then Erica sent the text. "You won't believe what transpired at the reception just now." And I grinned as I opened the message and saw what she had written. Nor a gloating smile, nor a mean one. It's the type that happens when the scales begin to balance on their own. Erica's message was brief, hurried, and exuberant. An hour prior to the ceremony, Brian was taken from the wedding. When she arrived, a woman from his company, HR or something, asked to have a private conversation with him. The next thing I know, he's sweating through his shirt, pacing wildly and talking on the phone. Emily lost it when her mother claimed that they were having a professional disagreement. She locked herself in the bridal room, shouted and tossed her bouquet at him in front of the makeup artists. Extra champagne is being used to stall the visitor. Jared is attempting to defuse the situation, but you know how that works? Not because I was shocked, but rather because of the lyrical symmetry. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. I took a seat at my kitchen table, read the letter 3 times, and then just laughed quietly and completely, not out of retaliation but out of relief. Emily's wedding was not ruined by me. I didn't ruin Brian's work. I just took myself out of the picture and let their dysfunction to take my place. As it happens, Brian failed to disclose certain significant information on his job application, such as his history of exploiting company resources for personal endeavors, such as producing wedding promotional content for Emily's expanding influencer program during business hours. Even worse, his social media presence has begun to cause internal concerns due to Jared's foolish posts. Erica's follow-up messages indicate that before extending his offer, HR had raised concerns about the matter and requested clarity right away. As they say, timing is crucial. However, the wedding still took place. It was kind of 2 hours late. At last, the ceremony started. Erica, who had access to gossip at the level of a maid of honor, said that Emily had calmed down sufficiently to walk down the aisle. Throughout her vows, she never smiled, and her eyes were crimson. She needed constant reminders from the photographer to appear joyful. During the processional, Brian was clearly frightened and spoke to Jared in an agitated whisper. He even dropped the ring at one point. I'm not even kidding. The gathering then proceeded to Lorne. My parents were present, naturally sitting in the center and acting as if nothing was wrong. My mom had a tight, Botox-like smile on her face. Apparently, my dad kept looking at the exits as if he thought someone might show up at the party. Nobody did. However, I did upload a picture that night. Nothing noteworthy. It's just me in my new apartment with a stack of books next to me, a cup of coffee in my hand, and the Asheville skyline in the distance. It was a straightforward caption. Sometimes peace appears like a one-bedroom in a sealed door, I tagged. No one said nothing else inside an hour. Melanie liked it, then unliked it, then liked it again. The week following the wedding, I got a parcel in the mail. No return address. Inside was a little envelope, the sort used for elegant invites. Inside that was a handwritten message. I'm sorry I got it now. No signature, but I recognized the penmanship. It was Emily's. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Over the next 3 weeks, the communication slowed. My mom tried once more. This time, gentler. I miss you. Things haven't been the same. But I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because the weight of those words no longer meant what she believed they did. Missing me only mattered if they ever actually saw me in the first place. Jared went silent after that. Maybe someone finally informed you that publicly trashing the person who used to pay your credit card wasn't the wisest option. Or maybe he finally understood I wasn't coming back. Melanie Surprise contacted out 2 months later with a photo of a damaged light and a short statement. Okay. I know why you barred us from the Prime account. Just tell me where you acquired this light. I adore it. I provided her a link. That was it. No further talk? Just a clean, respectful discussion between two grown-ups who have learnt how to keep their distance. As for my parents, well, I heard from Erica that they were suffering with the business. Turns out, without the whole loan, and with numerous payments already overdue, they had to downsize. My dad sold off 2 vehicles. My mom ceased her weekly salon sessions. The expansion plans were halted indefinitely, yet they survived. They always do. People like them. People who assume the world owes them merely for existing don't fall in a single spectacular blast. They dissolve slowly, silently, until one day they look around and all the individuals who used to hold them up are just gone. And me, I'm still in Asheville. I picked up hiking, got into photography. There's a bookshop around the corner that conducts open mic evenings, and I've even read a few essays. They're tales about boundaries, about choosing yourself, about the quiet power of walking away. No one in the crowd knows they're about my family. No one has to. A few weeks back, a woman came me afterward and mentioned that one about the restaurant that hit. I've been that person at the table, I grinned and just responded, Yep, me too. That's the problem. I didn't require retribution. I didn't have to create a scene, shout, or turn the tables. I only needed to step away from the table and let them handle the money.